Pinecrest Estate seemed like the answer to our prayers when we first drove through the ornate iron gates. After 20 years of military housing and constant relocations, my wife Sarah and I were ready to put down permanent roots. The neighborhood gleamed with perfection. Every lawn cut to precisely the same height. Every mailbox painted the same shade of hunter green. Children rode bicycles safely down quiet streets while sprinklers created rainbows in the afternoon sun. We fell in love with a two-story colonial on Oak Blossom Drive. The previous owners had maintained it meticulously, and the backyard offered enough privacy for Sarah to finally enjoy the peaceful retirement she deserved. After 2 decades as a Green Beret and one of the few female snipers in Special Forces, she wanted nothing more than garden space and quiet mornings with coffee on the patio. The neighbors welcomed us with homemade pies and handshakes. The Millers across the street invited us to their barbecue. The Johnsons next door offered to show us around the community center. For the first time in our married life, we felt like we belonged somewhere permanent. No more temporary assignments, no more living out of boxes. This was home. 3 weeks after moving in, we attended our first homeowners association, meeting in the sleek community clubhouse. The 7 board members sat at a long mahogany table facing rows of chairs filled with residents. Mrs. Eleanor Harrington, the HOA president, ran the meeting with parliamentary precision. She was a slim woman in her 60s with expertly colored blonde hair and pearls that clicked softly whenever she gestured. "And now let us welcome our newest residents," Mrs. Harrington announced, consulting her notes. "Mr. James Wilson and his wife Sarah from the military, I believe." "Yes, thank you," I stood, smiling. "I work in IT, but Sarah just retired after 20 years in the Army, Special Forces. We are looking forward to being part of this beautiful community." Something flickered across Mrs. Harrington's face. The other board members exchanged glances. "How interesting," she said, her smile tightening. "Well, we trust you have reviewed our comprehensive community guidelines. Pinecrest Estates maintains its property values through strict adherence to standards." Sarah nudged me gently as we left the meeting. "Did you notice how they reacted when you mentioned Special Forces?" she asked quietly. I dismissed her concern, probably just surprised. Not many women in Special Forces, let alone Green Berets. The first violation notice arrived exactly 1 week later. Our mailbox was apparently 2 shades darker than the approved Pinecrest green. I repainted it immediately, wanting to be good neighbors. The second notice came 3 days after that. Our garbage bins remained visible from the street for 17 minutes after collection, exceeding the 15-minute limit in the bylaws. When I tried to discuss these issues at the HOA office, the secretary handed me forms to complete in triplicate. My emails requesting clarification received automated responses. My phone calls went to voicemail. After our 4th violation notice, for excessive holiday lighting on a single wreath at Christmas, I encountered Mrs. Harrington in the community center parking lot. "Mrs. Harrington, could we discuss these notices? We are trying our best to comply, but some of these seem rather arbitrary." She adjusted her designer sunglasses, not quite looking at me. "Mr. Wilson, the rules apply equally to everyone. Your military background does not entitle you to special treatment. This is a civilian community with standards. Either meet them or perhaps consider housing more suited to your lifestyle." As she walked away, her meaning became crystal clear. Sarah and I were not welcome in Pinecrest Estates. The perfect neighborhood had just revealed its first crack in the facade, and that crack was aimed directly at us. January brought a fresh wave of violation notices. Our trash can lids were not securely fastened during a windstorm. The wreath we had been cited for at Christmas had remained up 3 days into the new year. Our mailbox, despite repainting, was now allegedly 1 inch taller than regulation height. Each infraction carried increasingly severe fines. Sarah reviewed each notice with the same methodical precision she once applied to mission briefings. She arranged them chronologically in a binder, photographing each document and making notes in the margins. Her silence worried me more than anger would have. "Do you think this is normal?" I asked one evening as she documented our latest violation for unauthorized vegetation when wildflowers sprouted near our fence. "No," she replied simply, This is targeted. At the supermarket the following week, I ran into Tom Baker, whose ranch house backed up to the community pond. We had chatted pleasantly at neighborhood gatherings, but today he looked uncomfortable seeing me. "Everything okay, Tom?" I asked, noticing how he kept glancing around. "Look, Jim," he lowered his voice. "I should not be talking to you, the board does not like it, but you seem like good people and you should know. The Andersons who owned your house before you, he was Air Force. Before them, the Reeds, he was Marines. Before them, the Douglases, Navy." My stomach tightened. What happened to them? They all left within a year. Violations, fines, foreclosure threats. Mrs. Harrington has some sort of issue with military families. Her husband was passed over for some big promotion by a veteran years ago. At least that is what people say. He grabbed his cart. "I never told you this. Good luck." That evening, I searched county property records online. Our lot had indeed changed ownership 6 times in 8 years, far more than any other property in Pinecrest. Every previous owner had military connections. None had stayed longer than 14 months. The next HOA meeting confirmed our suspicions. When Sarah applied to join the landscaping committee, citing her new master gardener certification, her application was denied without explanation. When I raised a question about selective enforcement of guidelines, Mrs. Harrington cut me off mid-sentence. "The board does not recognize your question, Mr. Wilson. Next item on the agenda." Other residents avoided eye contact. When we entered the community pool that weekend, 3 families suddenly remembered urgent appointments. A neighbor who had previously invited our daughter for a playdate now hurried her child inside when they saw us approaching. The isolation strategy was working. We were being systematically cut off from the community. One night, Sarah showed me printouts of emails she had obtained through a friendly contact at the county records office. They were communications between HOA board members discussing the military situation at 347 Oak Blossom and maintaining the character of our community. "This is discrimination," I said, anger rising in my chest. Sarah nodded. "Yes, but it is also personal. Look at this." She pointed to an email from Mrs. Harrington to the board treasurer. "The Wilson property needs to return to inventory by summer. Military families disrupt community cohesion and property values. The pattern of rapid turnover on that lot has been beneficial to our investment group. Please accelerate compliance measures." "They are forcing people out deliberately," I said, stunned by the calculated cruelty. "But why?" "Control," Sarah replied, "and possibly profit. Notice how each sale has been at progressively higher prices, with the HOA collecting transfer fees each time." Her eyes held the same steady focus I had seen when she explained combat operations. "They have been doing this for years. We are just the latest targets." That night, Sarah did something I had not seen since her retirement. She checked the perimeter of our property before bed, scanning sight lines and access points with professional precision. When she returned inside, her expression had hardened into something I recognized from our years of military life together. "They do not know who they are dealing with," she said quietly, "and that is their first mistake." The splintering crack of wood breaking jolted us awake at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was instantly alert, moving with the silent efficiency that had kept her alive in war zones. I fumbled for my glasses as she slipped to the window, keeping to the side of the frame as she peered out. 2 men, HOA maintenance uniforms. "They are dismantling our pergola," she reported in a clipped, professional tone I had not heard since her retirement. We hurried downstairs and out the back door. The men turned, startled by our appearance. One held a crowbar that had been used to pry decorative lattice from the structure. The pergola, which we had specifically confirmed complied with HOA regulations before installation, was now half destroyed. "What are you doing? We have approval documentation for this structure," I demanded, anger making my voice shake. The larger man consulted a clipboard. "Work order from the HOA board. This structure exceeds height limitations by 3 inches and must be removed." "That is impossible. We measured carefully and have written approval," Sarah said, her voice unnervingly calm. The man shrugged. Take it up with the board, we are just doing our job. As they left, Sarah stood motionless in our damaged garden, surveying the destruction with eyes that missed nothing. Her stillness concerned me more than rage would have. It was the focused calm I had seen in photographs of her in combat zones, the predator assessing the situation before acting. This ends now, she said finally. That afternoon, we installed a comprehensive security system. 8 cameras with night vision covered every approach to our property. Motion sensors read the perimeter. A digital recorder secured in our attic stored every frame of footage. The investment proved worthwhile immediately. That very night, our cameras captured Mrs. Harrington herself and another board member measuring our grass with rulers at 11:43 p.m. 2 days later, the footage showed someone placing violation notices directly on our door without mailing copies as required in the bylaws. Throughout the next week, we documented board members photographing our home, peering through windows, and once, attempting to access our backyard gate. Then the vandalism began. We woke to find our mailbox knocked over. The next day, decorative stones from our garden path had been scattered across the driveway. A newly planted row of begonias was uprooted and left to die in the sun. The anonymous notes started appearing in our mailbox. Military not welcome here. Find another neighborhood. Some people need to learn their place. Sarah no longer slept through the night. Instead, she monitored the security feeds, tracking patterns, identifying vulnerabilities. Her military training had kicked in completely now. Our home had become a forward operating base in hostile territory. That van, she said one morning, pointing to footage from our cameras. It has been parked on 3 different streets this week, always with a direct view of our property. She was right. The unmarked white utility van moved positions daily, but maintained constant surveillance of our home. When I tried approaching it once, it drove away before I could reach the driver. We filed formal complaints with documentation of the harassment. The HOA response arrived by certified mail. Not only had they rejected our complaints, but they were countersuing us for $15,000 in unpaid fines and penalties we had never been properly notified about. Worse, they had placed a lien against our property, which would prevent us from selling without paying them. Through a sympathetic clerk at City Hall, we obtained records that confirmed our suspicions. Mrs. Harrington's husband, retired Colonel Harrington, had been passed over for promotion 20 years earlier when the selection board chose a decorated combat veteran instead. The Harringtons had moved to Pinecrest Estates shortly after, where Alina quickly rose to board leadership. The pattern of driving out military families began almost immediately after she became president. This is not just about property values or community standards, Sarah said as we reviewed the evidence. This is a vendetta. That night, Sarah shook me awake at 2 a.m. She pointed silently to our security monitor. Someone was spray painting our front-facing cameras, methodically blinding our security system. By morning, all exterior cameras had been disabled. As we documented the damage for police reports, we found a note taped to our front door. Last warning, leave now or next time we will not stop at property. The threat hung in the air between us. Sarah read it twice, then folded it carefully into an evidence bag. When she looked up at me, something had changed in her eyes. The patient, gardening enthusiast who had embraced suburban retirement was gone. In her place stood the battle-tested operator who had survived decades in the world's most dangerous environments. They have declared war, she said simply. Now they get to learn what that really means. Our dining room transformed overnight into what Sarah called the TOC, Tactical Operations Center. The large oak table where we had imagined hosting family dinners now disappeared beneath maps, documents, and legal printouts. The walls became a timeline of harassment, with photographs and security footage stills connected by red string to violation notices and property damage reports. First principle of asymmetric warfare, Sarah explained as she organized our counteroffensive. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. She approached our HOA problem with the same methodical discipline that had made her an elite soldier. Every incident was cataloged, every interaction documented, every pattern analyzed for weaknesses and opportunities. "This is not different from any other hostile territory," she said, reviewing security footage frame by frame. "They have numbers and local authority. We have training and the element of surprise. They do not expect resistance." We hired Angela Martinez, an attorney specializing in HOA disputes. When she arrived for our first consultation, her eyes widened at the war room we had created. "Most people give up long before this point," she admitted, examining our documentation. "The HOA banking on intimidation working because it usually does, but this," she gestured at our walls of evidence, "this is exceptional." "What are our legal options?" I asked. "Multiple," Angela replied. "Discrimination based on military service is actionable under federal law. The property damage and harassment create civil liability. Lities, the falsified violations and improper notices violate state HOA regulations. But litigation takes time, and they know that. They will escalate while the legal process grinds forward." Sarah nodded. "Exactly what I anticipated. We need parallel operations. Legal action proceeds formally while we gather intelligence and build alliances." I took responsibility for the human intelligence aspect of our plan. I began parking 3 blocks away from meeting locations, using cash for purchases, and varying my routes to avoid the surveillance vehicles that still monitored our movements. I met with current and former residents in coffee shops, parks, and shopping centers outside our neighborhood. Their stories mirrored ours: selective enforcement, mysterious property damage, intimidation tactics. Many spoke in whispers, fearful of retaliation if their cooperation became known. "Mrs. Harrington has friends at the police department and the county assessor office," one neighbor warned me. "She has been running this neighborhood like her personal fiefdom for 15 years. Nobody challenges her and stays." I gathered affidavits, copies of violation notices, and testimonials from 12 current residents and 8 former homeowners who had been driven out. The pattern was undeniable. Military families received 3 times more violations than other residents. Their fines were substantially higher. Their appeals were universally rejected. While I built our legal case, Sarah focused on security. She reinforced door frames, installed backup cameras hidden in birdhouses and landscape lighting, and created fallback communication systems independent of our home Wi-Fi or cell service. Each night, she conducted perimeter checks, a habit from deployment she had never fully abandoned. One evening during her security sweep, she froze, signaling me to silence. She pointed silently to movement in the shadows beyond our fence line. Through night vision binoculars, we observed 2 men photographing our home and noting entries and exits. Our hidden backup cameras captured their faces clearly. "Former contractors," Sarah whispered, recognizing their positioning and movement patterns. "Military adjacent, not regular security guards." 3 days later, Mrs. Harrington cornered me in the frozen food aisle at the local supermarket. Her smile never reached her cold eyes as she blocked my shopping cart. "Mr. Wilson, this prolonged unpleasantness benefits no one," she said smoothly. "Perhaps you and your militaristic wife should consider that not all neighborhoods are suitable for people of your background. Pinecrest Estates has standards and traditions that some find difficult to adapt to." I maintained my composure. "We find the community lovely, Mrs. Harrington. We plan to stay for many years." Her smile tightened. "That would be unwise. Some problems need to be removed completely. This neighborhood has ways of handling situations like yours." Our attorney filed our discrimination complaint with county authorities the following day. We submitted our evidence to the State Housing Commission and the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. But legal wheels turned slowly, and Mrs. Harrington's influence ran deep in local government. That evening, Sarah detected additional surveillance teams, not just the familiar white van, but now multiple vehicles with rotating observation posts. Whoever Mrs. Harrington had hired was professional and escalating their presence. "They are establishing patterns," Sarah explained as we reviewed the security footage. "Learning our routines, documenting when we leave, when we return, which lights stay on at night." For what purpose? I asked, though I feared I knew the answer. Preparation, she replied. This level of surveillance is not for issuing lawn care violations. They are planning something more direct. Sarah spent the next 3 days installing additional security measures throughout our property. Hidden cameras backed up to remote servers, reinforced door frames and window locks, motion sensors connected to silent alerts on our phones. She installed physical barriers that could be deployed quickly at entry points. When I asked if all this was truly necessary, she fixed me with the steady gaze that had seen her through countless dangerous missions. James, they are not playing HOA games anymore, she said quietly. Those men are professional intimidation specialists. Mrs. Harrington has crossed a line from harassment to something much more sinister. We need to be ready. Ready for what? I asked. For when they decide that paperwork and vandalism are not enough, she answered. For when they come to force us out directly. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. The envelope bore the formal insignia of Pinecrest Estates Homeowners Association, alongside the logo of their legal representation. Inside, formal foreclosure proceedings had been initiated. Over unpaid assessments and accumulated fines, totaling $27,450. According to their documentation, we had failed to respond to multiple notices and had exhausted our appeal options. I called our mortgage company immediately. They confirmed we were in excellent standing, but explained that the HOA had filed legal claims that effectively froze our property status. Until the dispute was resolved, we could neither refinance nor sell without addressing the alleged debt. They fabricated everything, I told Sarah that evening. Created fake notices we never received, documented appeals we never filed, then claimed we exhausted processes we never participated in. She nodded, unsurprised. Classic information warfare, create a paper reality that contradicts actual events. The next phase began the following morning. Black SUVs with community security logos appeared on our street. They circled the neighborhood hourly, slowing dramatically when passing our home. Men with earpieces and telltale bulges beneath their jackets began following us to our vehicles when we left for work or errands. Private security contractors, Sarah observed, but vastly overqualified for neighborhood patrol. She was right, these were not typical rent-a-cops or retired police officers working security jobs. Their positioning, communication styles, and tactical awareness spoke of specialized training. They maintained constant radio contact. They established overlapping fields of observation. They conducted coordinated shift changes that never left gaps in coverage. Our mail began arriving opened or damaged. Legal correspondence from our attorney disappeared entirely. Our attorney confirmed she had sent 3 separate certified letters that never arrived. Someone was intercepting our mail, a federal offense that local police seemed uninterested in investigating. The deputy who took my report plays golf with Colonel Harrington, Sarah noted after returning from the police station. They are going to bury this. One night, all our visible security cameras were spray-painted simultaneously by multiple individuals moving with coordinated precision. The attack took less than 40 seconds to disable 7 cameras around our property. Only our hidden backup systems captured the operation. Sarah studied the security contractors through binoculars from our darkened upstairs window. Her expression darkened as she focused on one man with a distinctive stance. That one, she pointed to a muscular individual supervising the others. Former private military contractor. I recognized the tactical positioning and command posture. Blackwater or one of its successor organizations. She disappeared into the garage for several hours after that observation. When she emerged, she carried bags of supplies from the hardware store. Together, we installed reinforced door frames, additional deadbolts, and special window locks that prevented entry even if the glass was broken. Our attorney called with disturbing news. The judge assigned to our discrimination case had recused himself due to personal connections to interested parties. The case was reassigned to a judge known for ruling in favor of homeowners associations. They have influenced the legal system, Angela warned us. Mrs. Harrington has deeper connections than I anticipated. We need to pursue federal intervention. That night, I found Sarah sitting motionless in our darkened living room at 3 in the morning. She was positioned to observe the street while remaining invisible from outside. The security lights from neighboring houses cast just enough illumination for me to see her face. It held an expression of complete focus I had rarely witnessed outside of photographs from her deployment days. "They are escalating to force a confrontation," she explained quietly. "These are not rental cops or neighborhood watchmen. These men are trained for intimidation operations." "Should we consider leaving?" I asked, "finding somewhere else to live?" Sarah shook her head slowly. "That is what they want. If we leave, they win. The discrimination continues. The next military family suffers the same fate." She turned to face me fully. "James, I spent 20 years protecting American freedoms in distant countries. I never expected to fight the same battle in our own neighborhood, but the principle remains identical. This stops with us." The next morning confirmed Sarah's assessment of the escalation. We found our car windows shattered in the driveway, not smashed carelessly with a baseball bat or rock, but precisely broken with a glass-breaking tool that left characteristic fracture patterns. On the driver's seat lay a note, "Leave now or next time it will not be just property." Sarah photographed everything before we called the police. The responding officers seemed skeptical of our claims that the HOA security team was responsible. "No proof of who did it," one officer shrugged, "probably Jay." "Us kids." As they left without taking fingerprints or collecting the threatening note as evidence, Sarah watched them with narrowed eyes. "They know exactly who did this," she said. "They are complicit." That afternoon, Sarah began implementing what she called countermeasures. She installed motion-activated lights at unexpected angles. She positioned speakers capable of broadcasting recorded sounds at high volume. She created physical obstacles that could be rapidly deployed at strategic points around our property. "What exactly are you preparing for?" I asked as she tested a series of remote triggers. "They have exhausted legal intimidation," she replied. "Next comes direct action, possibly a staged break-in or property destruction significant enough to make the house uninhabitable. They will make it look like an accident or random crime." "You cannot be certain of that," I protested. Sarah fixed me with the steady gaze that had made her legendary among her military colleagues. I have seen this pattern before in different contexts. Escalating pressure, surveillance, isolation of targets, then a decisive action disguised as something else. They are following a playbook. That night, Sarah asked me to help her move furniture to create clear pathways through our home. She established what she called safe zones and response positions. She showed me a reinforced closet in our bedroom that would serve as a secure location if things went wrong. "If I tell you to get to the safe room, do it immediately without question," she instructed. "Stay there until I personally come for you or until police arrive, no matter what you hear." "Do you really believe it will come to that?" I asked, the reality of our situation finally sinking in. "I hope not," she replied, "but hope is not a strategy. We prepare for worst-case scenarios so we never have to face them unprepared." As we completed our preparations, Sarah checked her phone and frowned at a notification from our security system. "The surveillance vehicles have changed position," she said. "All 3 have moved to covering different approaches to our property. They never do that unless." She left the thought unfinished, but her meaning was clear. The pattern had changed, something was coming. Midnight brought the low rumble of vehicles approaching with headlights off. Our perimeter sensors illuminated with silent alerts on our phones. Security cameras showed 3 black SUVs parking strategically around our cul-de-sac, blocking potential exit routes. Men in dark clothing emerged, checking equipment and communicating via hand signals and radio earpieces. Sarah shook me awake, already fully dressed and alert. The transformation in her was complete. Gone was any trace of the retired gardening enthusiast. The woman moving efficiently through our darkened bedroom was every inch the elite operator who had conducted some of the most challenging missions in modern warfare. "Stay in the safe room," she whispered, her voice changed, harder and focused. "This is not an HOA inspection. These are armed contractors." As I moved toward our pre-planned shelter, I caught a glimpse of something in her hand glinting in the moonlight. Not a weapon, but a collection of devices I did not recognize. The confidence in her posture reminded me who she really was beneath her quiet suburban exterior. "What are you going to do?" I whispered. "Exactly what I trained for 20 years to do," she replied calmly. "Protect my home against hostile forces." She checked something on her phone. "They have cut our power. Backup systems are engaging now." She disappeared silently into the darkness of our home as I secured myself in the reinforced closet we had prepared. Through a small monitor connected to our security system, I could observe what happened next. 3 men in tactical gear approached our front door. Their movements were coordinated and professional. They carried equipment bags and what appeared to be a portable battering ram. The largest man stepped forward. "HOA emergency compliance inspection," he shouted, pounding on our door. "Open up immediately." When no response came, he nodded to his companions. "Breaking for emergency access," he announced loudly, clearly establishing their cover story for any witnesses. The battering ram swung back, but before it could strike our door, our entire property transformed into a battlefield of Sarah's design. Motion-activated lights blazed from unexpected angles, temporarily blinding the intruders who had adjusted to darkness. Hidden speakers broadcast recorded military commands at disorienting volumes. "Team Alpha secure the perimeter. Bravo Team move in from the west." The men hesitated, clearly confused by sounds suggesting a large security force surrounding them. In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah executed her plan with terrifying precision. The sprinkler system engaged suddenly, but not with water, a harmless bee. A disorienting mixture of water and food coloring sprayed across the front approach, making the ground unexpectedly slippery and marking the intruders with identifiable stains. One man lost his footing on the slick surface and went down hard. Before he could recover, Sarah appeared behind him, movements economical and swift. Within seconds, his own handcuffs secured him to our porch railing. The second intruder, responding to his colleague's fall, backed toward the side of the house, directly into a prepared snare that entangled his legs. As he struggled to free himself, Sarah emerged from the shadows, redirecting his momentum to guide him into our garden shed. The door locked automatically behind him. The leader, more experienced than his team, recognized the ambush and attempted to retreat to the street. He made it 3 steps before Sarah intercepted him. Their encounter lasted less than 5 seconds. Though she never struck him directly, her knowledge of leverage and balance left him face down on our lawn, professionally zip-tied and immobilized. All 3 men had been neutralized without a single punch thrown or shot fired. Sarah had used their own momentum, confusion, and poor positioning against them. The entire operation had taken less than 90 seconds. As police sirens approached, responding to the silent alarm Sarah had triggered at the first sign of intrusion, a familiar luxury sedan sped into our cul-de-sac. Mrs. Harrington emerged, her normally perfect appearance disheveled in her haste. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded as patrol cars pulled up. "These men are authorized HOA security conducting an emergency inspection." The arriving officers found a scene they clearly had not expected. 3 restrained men in tactical gear with no official identification or badges, marked with bright blue dye for easy identification. Their equipment bags, now open on our lawn, contained tools specifically designed for breaking and entering, not for property inspections. "Officer, I demand you release these men immediately," Mrs. Harrington shouted. "They are acting under my authority as HOA president." Sarah stood calmly on our porch, hands visible and unthreatening. These men attempted to force entry into our home at midnight with a battering ram and entry tools. They have no badges, no court order, no warrants, and no legal authority to enter our property. We have everything recorded from multiple angles. She gestured to our security cameras, including the hidden backup systems that had captured every moment of the encounter. "Officer Jenkins," Mrs. Harrington said with forced composure to one of the policemen. "You know me. These troublemakers have been violating HOA regulations for months. We were simply conducting an emergency inspection as allowed in our bylaws." The officer looked uncomfortable. At midnight, with tactical gear and entry tools, that does not sound like an inspection, Mrs. Harrington. Another police car arrived. The senior officer who emerged examined the restrained men and their equipment with growing concern. "These men have military contractor IDs," he announced, "not security guard licenses, and this equipment is not standard for property inspections." Mrs. Harrington's face drained of color as Sarah played a recording from her phone. Mrs. Harrington's own voice echoed clearly in the night air. "Make sure they understand they are not welcome here. Finish the job tonight. I do not care how you do it, just make sure they cannot stay in that house any longer." "Recorded this afternoon when you were instructing these men in the community center parking lot," Sarah explained, "along with your payment to them of $5,000 cash." The officers exchanged glances as their body cameras recorded Mrs. Harrington's reaction. "This is absurd," she sputtered. "They are lying, they manipulated that recording. This woman is dangerously unstable. She attacked these men who were simply doing their jobs." "Actually," said the senior officer, reviewing the security footage Sarah had provided on a tablet, "it appears she defended her property against armed intruders without causing any injuries. Quite impressive restraint, given the circumstances." As Mrs. Harrington continued her increasingly desperate explanations, the three intruders were unrestrained by police only to be immediately handcuffed with official police restraints. "Mrs. Eleanor Harrington," the senior officer said formally, "these men have already confirmed they were hired by you personally, not through any official HOA channels. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit breaking and entering, filing false reports, and several other charges we will sort out at the station." As Mrs. Harrington was led to a patrol car, still protesting her innocence and demanding to call her attorney, Sarah finally signaled that I could leave the safe room. I joined her on the porch as our neighborhood, awakened by the commotion, gathered in small groups on their lawns. Their expressions ranged from shock to something that looked remarkably like relief. Sarah stood quietly beside me, her mission completed. To the watching neighbors and remaining officers, she appeared calm and composed. Only I could see the slight tremor in her hands as the adrenaline began to subside, the only indication of the precise, controlled violence she had been prepared to unleash to protect our home. Dawn broke on a neighborhood forever changed. Police evidence technicians worked methodically around our property, documenting the attempted break-in and collecting statements. News vans lined the streets, reporters delivering live updates against the backdrop of our ordinary suburban home that had become the center of extraordinary events. By noon, the full story had begun to emerge. Mrs. Harrington and two other board members were charged with multiple felonies: conspiracy, hiring armed intimidation, falsifying legal documents, and attempted breaking and entering. Their phones and computers had been seized, revealing years of communications targeting military families for harassment and forced removal. The three contractors had quickly turned on their employers, providing detailed statements about being hired to make the property uninhabitable, so the HOA could force foreclosure and resale. Their military contractor backgrounds had made them overconfident against what they assumed would be unprepared civilians. Our phones rang constantly with journalists seeking interviews and statements. Sarah, still uncomfortable with attention of any kind, agreed to provide only one brief comment: "I protected my home, nothing more." But the impact reached far beyond our cul-de-sac. Homeowners across the country recognized their own HOA nightmares in our